Can you hear me? Yeah, now you can hear me. Great. So, yeah, thanks everyone for showing up. I'm gonna talk about direction for the next 50 or so minutes. I'm Saiken Mercury, everyone. So, just a bit of background from myself and why I'm doing this talk or talks like this at Revision. On the right is just some different things I'm interested in case you want to chat me up. Other than that, yeah, I'm going now more than 20 years in the scene. I have a background in film, in visual effects, in animation. That's also what I usually do in the scene. I've headed the category of Best Direction for the Meteorics in 21 and 22. Not after that, because after that I also organized mountain bikes together with Shona and Procyon and a whole lot of other wonderful people. I'm also member of the board of Echtzeit, Digitale Kultur, the Swiss Demoscene Association, and I cosplay as a security architect during business hours. In case you want to hit me up, Mastodon probably the best place. So, yeah, I'm gonna talk about stuff like that. That's kind of like the few topics I want to get into in the next minutes. There will be some theory and just like my own personal opinion, how I view direction, this whole topic. I want to show you a practical example from the making of Fermi Paradox, stuff that went into that. I also want to give you some practical advice, ideas that I call like a toolbox, things you hopefully could apply to your own work. Yeah, and some further reading material. Before we start with the whole theory thing, yeah, just like some, not disclaimer, but just some things I want to get out of my way. The way I see direction, especially in a Demoscene context, today I don't want to talk about stuff like, oh yeah, how to tell a story, things like that. Don't have to think too much about it, unless of course you want to tell a story. But not everything's about that. I also won't get too much into like art of editing, art of camera direction, things like that. That's usually for me, it's on top of the concept of direction. Also don't want to get too much into the whole concept thing because usually, especially at the Meteorics, it's sometimes quite a discussion about the best or most unique concept and best direction. There's a lot of discussions about it. I want to focus on the direction. I'm a bit irritated about that sound, sorry. So. Good. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and also not really into this like whole executing your vision or the director as like this singular piece of creative force. So, but I want to talk about what I call shaping experiences or controlling experience of an audience. I want to talk a bit about pacing, so structuring in time, and about audience reactions. I want also embrace a lot what the scene has to offer uniquely in terms of direction. I want to talk a bit about how you can use your resources or how to use them effectively. And I would also like you that moving forward, just think about how to have fun with that stuff. Because at the end, we're here to have fun and not to do a job. So, starting in probably with the question that usually comes up. So, what is it actually, this direction thing? And yeah, what does it mean when we are looking at the demo? What does it mean when we nominate people for best direction in a demo? The answer of that is usually it depends. And it depends on the context of what is being directed. And we have this thing that when we think about best direction, we're usually heavily influenced by the view of classic Hollywood feature filmmaking direction. That's just one form of it. I want you to think that other areas where you have a director. Think, for example, ballet has a director for ballet show. So does a lot of dance. So does an art installation. Usually has someone who directs the show. Think about those areas. Music videos is something else. It also needs direction. And so getting to a general definition of direction will always be very high level. And I'm kind of thinking of it just everywhere where you have creative decisions being made, which influences how something is shown, you usually have some form of direction there. To strive away a lot from filmmaking, from editing, from everything else, I thought about, well, what everyone pretty much knows, and what you could also say has a lot of direction going on, is if you are planning and organizing a birthday party for someone. You will have usually two parts to it, which are two parts that you have nearly every endeavor of direction. First part is what I call guiding the makers or directing people. It's the who, what, when of structuring something. It's organizing, it's management. It's managing people for the most part. But it's usually something that is required for the thing we like to talk and think about, and that it's guiding the experience or directing the content. Here you take creative decisions, pretty much every part, and guiding the experience, directing the content part, it's dependent on your audience. For example, think about a birthday party. What kind of party is it? If your audience are some 8-year-old children, or if it is your spouse, it will be highly different what creative decisions you make. It's also driven by your intent, what you want to achieve with it. Do you want some laid-back atmosphere, people having good discussions, or do you want to have the party of the year? That's kind of your intent which drives the decisions forward. And of course, also your resources. Can you rent a yacht for the party or not? It will influence your decision to take. That's just like a really way out there example, but this is also applying the principles of direction. It's something pretty much each of every one of us has experienced in some way. For me personally, the way I like to think about direction is basically this: the art of taking the audience on a journey. And I like to think about this really, kind of really picturesque. That, because especially in terms of college, you prepare your production, you send it out, it's in the compo, people see it. They will experience something when watching it. And you prepare a path for them through something. And the path that it's going to take, that's the direction that is being applied. And I also like to think about this in a way that all your content you have, that's the world. That's the world that's being presented. And there are many, many, many ways that a path could take through that world. And what the world is, what the content is, will heavily influence what will be experienced, but also so will the path taken. And if you really think about this in a way like doing a hike or something like that, you have various things on top of the content, on top of the world, which highly influence the experience that you have. If you're just getting tired on a walk, and then you come up to a little hill and you see your next destination, and you gain more energy through that, you're refreshed, you're euphoric maybe, that's the path being taken that makes this experience. So yeah, I think about this all the decisions, the path you make for the audience, basically for the experience they will have on top of the content. And in a similar way, the good direction is a path that's always interesting, something that makes an impression and has lasting experiences for the audience. Again, if you picture it quite visually as a path, you could say, well, there's this fantastic world, and one path may be something that's really, I will think about this 10 years from now on, because it was such a great experience taking that path. You could have taken another path, same environment, but maybe not so impressive. So for me also, good direction, shows it in the best way possible. On the other side, bad direction would be something that just either isn't really that interesting or something that is cumbersome. I also like the sentence, having great content, but maybe not so good direction would be like being in a beautiful place, but having nothing to do and nowhere to go. So, of course, we are at revision. So, what about demos specifically? What about intros? Because I get quite a lot of questions, especially in the realms of Meteorics, but also otherwise, like how does it really apply to it, or does it really make a difference in demos in context? Do I need to know my direction stuff if I just want to show off one specific thing? So I just want to kind of these are all things that's really, really memorable to me personally. But just saying, if you look, for example, for Elevated, which you could say, well, that's because it's so technically impressive. But I'm thinking about, well, IQ could give a talk about all the really, really impressive things. I would love that talk. I would be excited to hear it. I probably wouldn't shout and scream while seeing it. What happens usually when you see Elevate, or especially when you've seen it for the first time? And it has a lot of build-up throughout the intro. Again, something that, in my opinion, guides the audience and also kind of informs the audience on what to focus. Other example, STS2 from Synesthetics. I love this. I don't think it made such an impact on bigger crowd. They want to focus on audience because it has a banging Psytrance soundtrack and the colors scream at you. It's high energy. I'm the ideal audience for that demo. And I love it, but it doesn't lose me in the process. For me, it flows nice. It's a nice experience. For someone else, maybe not so much. We have Smaller Matters of Heart, which really does a lot in terms of storytelling. And again, from a demo scene perspective, putting this in 64K is something that also elevates the experience of the audience. That's something to take into account. The experience of seeing something we might not believe that it's really possible in that size. And you can take this into account from a direction perspective. Regards concept, VCell from Keulers on bottom left, which has a great concept of, well, let's do all these demo effects, but only with things that remind of cells and bodily fluids and things like that. But it's very easy to picture the same concept, maybe even with the same art, but have something kind of forgettable in it. So great concept, but also great execution, that you don't get bored watching it. Of course, there's Play, which put a lot of work into guiding the viewer, building up to something. That's a good example. Also, on the bottom left, I think pretty much everyone who's seen this demo remembers the greetings parts with the robot, which is a great scene in of itself. But I want to ask you, or something that you can ask yourself, would you remember that greetings part the same way if it were somewhere else in the demo? because this is quite a big creative decision, where to put things. What comes before, what comes after. That's not just editing, that's also on a really broad spectrum. Where do you want certain impact on the audience? And that heavily influences how something will be experienced and also remembered. So that's just like a short exercise on the demos that, yeah, for me, absolutely it's important, because every creative decision you take which influences how the audience will see your production, that's direction decision take. So from all that theory, basically just trying to answer, well, what's about this direction anyway? Let's go to something a bit more practical, and yeah, that's a few years back, but it's been the best practical experience I can give you. Short question in the audience: who hasn't seen Fermi Paradox and doesn't remember? Okay, not that much, because I would love to keep the time for questions instead of showing the whole 5 minutes. And so I would just go in. Sorry for those who haven't seen it. I hope the examples will still kind of stick with you. So, yeah. To start, probably, maybe, or now you remember the screenshot of the intro. We started a few months before revision 16. The whole idea for Fermi Paradox came when Cooper experimented with atmospheric shading, atmospheric scattering on a planetary scale, and he built something that looked a bit like this. It was a bit more crude, because that's just a screenshot from the intro. It was a bit more crude, but we all in the group realized, well, okay, that's something we need to do something with this, because that just looked phenomenal. We wanted to do something with it. That was the start, and it was pretty clear for us, well, it will have to do something with space, with planets, not much more. So we started just gathering inspiration. That was just stuff I've found in a directory called inspiration/revision 16. So I've pulled those out. This was really early gathering of ideas, collecting ideas. And yeah, it doesn't look that much like Fermi Paradox. There were a lot of ideas who didn't make it. A lot of things changed, but that's an important step, just collecting things and trying to get some ideas of what could it be, because then you can start talking about it. Some information about the process of Fermi Paradox, or how we worked at Mercury. I don't see myself as like the director at Mercury. We all share different things. We basically do what we like to do. Now, I can't code on that level. And for 64K, I can't really provide a lot of assets that we can load. So I do the other stuff. And I try to support the other people as much as I can in creative decisions, in forms of art direction, and a lot of that has to do with also building a bit of shared understanding. So what I then would do, or start to do, is stuff like that. Really crude, simple things. On the left, there's a color scheme, color timeline thing that I did really at this very early in the concept. So I worked with like 2 different color timelines. So it would be left to right, would be like the time. I tried to picture for myself something, how things could change. Then I tried to mix and match that. And at the bottom, it's just playing around with, well, if that's like our base color and we have some elements in another stronger color, how would it look? All the stuff I do is try to picture something in my head, what could it be? And I try to test as much as that before we have any kind of concrete example. On the right, I had to redraw this from my memories. And that's not a joke. That's stuff I usually do. I plot some forms of emotions on a timeline. Just the way I think about it, try to picture what could this production be, and you have something like excitement or something like confusions and things like that, and you can start map this, because this really, really helps when you work together building demo, because now you can start about, well, you know, around the first peak, around the first excitement peak, it would be nice to have something like this or that. It helps in communicating your ideas and also the ideas behind kind of the direction the demo or the intro will take. Another example, something I really like, is then again more on the conceptual stuff. So ignore the bottom left for now. The other one, top and bottom right. This came from, I was talking with Kube one evening, and he told me he had this idea for a scene. And he told me this in his words, what he thought it could look like, some kind of sci-fi skyscrapers, this light shining, this line of light in the middle, and he asked me if I could do just bring some of those idea paper, because it would help him if he would have something to look at. So he told me what he had in mind, and then I didn't draw this. This is just like some sci-fi cityscape Google image search result, cut out, mirrored, some color correction stuff, and it's really, really crude. And it only has the goal of conveying the basic ideas and the feeling. Doesn't try to do more. It's done very fast, very crude. On the bottom right, there's then the frame from the intro itself, what came out of it. It's not completely the same, but I think especially in terms of just how does the picture feel, how does that frame feel, one can see pretty direct connection. And on the bottom left is just my example of like, that's the maximum I will go in terms of concept art. For me, it's really, it stops at the moment where I can say, well, it conveys a feeling, an atmosphere, something like that. That's what I try to do, because I'm not a concept artist, but I try to bring and sketch ideas that give some meaning to a scene or to a timeline, something like that, that we can then use to talk about it, to bring things forward, again, to sketch things out. And once we have some form of content, that's usually then, or that's what I did with Firm Paradox. That was just screenshots from our demo tool. I tried different camera angles. I try, just finding some nice shots. And then I start either painting over it, trying out different color schemes, putting in some objects, just some cutouts, things like that. It's basically, I try to experiment with the scene without being actually able to change the scene itself. So without changing the content, I try to reiterate over it. And what this entails is testing out ideas. Oh, I see this scene, oh, I have this idea. I make a quick, crude version for it. But you can then start to combine stuff like that and stuff you tested out with something like this. You can now link your peaks of excitement to certain frames you took. And you can start to build also a form of storyboard. You can start to lay out your production. And for me, the most important thing about this one is, again, you're testing ideas, you iterate, you experiment, you can start to detect ideas that don't work. You can start to detect camera angles that don't work in that scene. You can start putting those different things together, try to have some form of little playbook. You could also start putting them in a timeline in a video editing software together with the soundtrack, see how that feels. And you can start to throw out things you see, oh, this doesn't work, this doesn't click, or that's not where we want to go. And you can start throwing out those ideas before you already have this in your kind of finished production. So that's why I really, really like this approach. Taking screenshots, or also, you can also take screenshots from other demos and put your own things in it. It's really just to convey your ideas before they finally exist. So, and then you actually put together an intro. That's screenshots from our demo tool at the time. It's basically just a timeline and parameter editor. So we put scenes together, we start animating it. And you don't need something like timeline editor for your creative approach to a demo, or for putting those direction lessons into. But what helps is everything that helps you iterate fast. So the way I would approach this is, I first start trying to have a really crude, mostly filled timeline together. Have blocks of content, and then I would iterate over the different blocks and then work on one block, put this down, and that's just a lot of reiteration. Watching something, changing something, seeing, does this feel better, or does it feel worse? And you do this again and again and again and again. And you try to remove as much of the things that do not feel good as you can. And all the stuff you did beforehand, the concept things, the timeline sketches, stuff like that, that helps you because you already have some kind of picture. It also helps you because you can talk with the other people working on it on the same terms. We worked all in parallel on the timeline. So some people did something else, but we always had a pretty good idea of what we want to achieve with it. You can't read it here, but I want to point out, I liked this when I saw it, that the first clip in the timeline, it's called Let's Kubrick the Shit Out of This. I wanted to highlight this because that's direction advice. You know? And it's absolutely fine to reference things you want to achieve if it gives everyone a better understanding what it means. Also for yourself, don't feel like you have to restrict yourself to some high artistic ideal or something. If you want to achieve, let's say, I want to do an intro and it should have such energy and impact as chaos theory, for example. Talk in it that way. That's a very, very direct advice and direct picture what you want. Don't try to stray away from that. And then you're dealing with all the stuff that doesn't work. Until now, it was pretty nice. Oh yeah, we put together our little storyboards and our timeline and things like that. We arrived on Friday at revision. I think we had content for 2/3 of the timeline. Wasn't everything filled? We had a deadline coming up. So we were working. I was iterating and doing camera stuff and still trying to figure out some color scheme in grading, because of course that concept I did with like the colors beforehand, everything that was already thrown out basically, or so much has changed until then. For Fermi Paradox, we had a nice thing regarding the colors, that a lot of stuff is just like physically accurate. Thanks to Urs, who knows that stuff. So some things we just have, no, that's the correct colors, we leave it that way. It helped, took a bit away from directing colors. But yeah, you deal with a lot of things that don't work. You probably also, at some point, you will deal with bugs. So until then, it's nice to think about all the stuff that you could do and all the stuff you try to achieve and how wonderful it will be. And then it doesn't work. That's normal. That's how it is to do a demo. You can decide, well, I'm just not there yet. And you say, well, I release it at another party. I will take back, I redo it. You can also say, no, I want to release this now. So I work with what I have. I remember quite fondly, I really wanted, at one point in the timeline, I really wanted to have another scene in Fermi Paradox, an additional one. Because I, again, with the background of like how I wanted the timeline to flow, how I wanted the energy to concentrate on some elements, I really thought it would need something more at a certain point so that this will flow nicely. We didn't have time to do it. We didn't have time to build a completely additional scene and integrate it. But so we scraped the idea. I had to let this idea go, realize it wasn't gonna happen, work with that, with the things that we had. I recommend, especially the newcomers here, especially people who are starting out, go talk to the people who did your favorite demos and intros and ask them what they would have done differently. Because everyone has those stories. And it can help. It can really help to see that even like the highest regarded productions, usually there were things that people wished they could have made different, wished they could have more time. So yeah, you start dealing with this, and a lot of times it just means, yeah, you have to let things go, have to get away from, that's also why I don't like this phrase of executing your vision, and stuff like that. No, things change. And the best things usually happen when you work with the changes, when you can adapt to them and not trying to just push through it. But that was a little excursion on Fermi Paradox. I'm gonna get myself a bit to drink. And now, yeah, okay, we're in time, that's good. So, yeah, I wanted to give you some, from a lot of things also that I talked beforehand, some stuff I did in Fermi Paradox, but that's also quite a few years ago. So I wanted to talk to you about a few ideas I think can help you with directing production, especially in demo scene. 1, 2, 3, yeah, okay, we're back, good. Yeah, those are mostly like ideas. They're not like tools you can download from GitHub, something like that. Those are things like, if you're not already standing on the shoulders of giants, you should start climbing, because that's very, very valuable information that you can gather, that's around, that's open. And don't hold back on using it. I love to read about just how things are made, how things came together. And I gain a lot of stuff that I apply just through listening to what other people have experienced. It also gets into learning from mistakes of other people. It's of course more effective if you learn from your own mistakes, but it's much more scalable if you look at where others have failed and try to find your own solutions for this. What I want to tell is that you are not starting from nothing, and you don't have to. Use it. Whatever interests you, reach out, try to find information, ask people what is your favorite book on camera work, for example. Where have you gained insight into this and that? And try to apply that. That's one of the things. Another thing, probably the most practical one in this, is map your journey. And I speak from the journey you want to take your audience on. And do I mean pulling up a random D&D map generator and drawing a path with where every town is a scene in your idea of demo? Absolutely, yeah. Have fun with it. Have fun with it, try to picture it. I love being able to talk about something that will come to existence, so that we try to do with stuff like, then you are in the last holdout of sanity, where things seem to be somewhat normal, but then you go through the forest of confusion, and everything's starting to change. You don't know where you are until you come to the big greetings plane, where we spend a lot of time chilling. Things like that. Convey, or try to convey the experience of someone walking that path. Try to map this out. This will help tremendously when you are working with it, when you're moving things forward, because you can revisit this. And you can say, I thought this would work. I thought it would be a nice idea. Now realize, it doesn't really work. You can take it out. You can draw another path. This gives guidance. This gives something to come back to. And it's really easy, simple, and fast to do. Try it. Try it out. Try to map your ideas. Doesn't have to be a D&D map. You can do a Gantt chart if you want to. Whatever works for you. What I really like also is that storyboards and index cards. Now, storyboards, probably most of the time, too over-engineered for your demos in production. If you're fine with it, if you like to sketch, you're fast in it, do it. You don't need a storyboard like you see in Hollywood making-ofs. But what I like are index cards. Index cards are something that you use in screenwriting. Basically, you put like your basic story beats, basic things you want to happen or you think that needs to happen. You put on a little card, you put them on a whiteboard or something like this. What's really easy to use for something like that are Kanban boards. Use a Kanban board, have like your basic intro, maybe a second scene, maybe a third, have some cards and just write down what should happen. Or write down what you want to achieve with it. People are cheering Amiga is a great example for that. You can put this on a card and you can start experimenting with it, putting it in different places. Read it, think about it, picture it, test things out. When you start doing paint overs from your screenshots, you can attach the screenshots to the cards. Experiment more. Filter out stuff that don't work. It's really just the art of efficiently iterating over ideas, because what's not really going to work and probably never going to work is that you have such a great concept of you're so good at direction that things will that you just know what will work and what you need to do that it happens. No, probably not. But you can get really good at iterating on things, trying out things, having ways to, again, throw out some ideas. Same thing with, reference other works. That was one of the things when I studied film and we had screenwriting lessons. One of the things which was really hard for most of us students to do at Go, and our teachers pressured us for us, to exactly write what we want and mean if it references something else. Oh, how should that character look like? Yeah, write down it should look like this actor in that movie. If that's your picture of it, write it down. A lot of us were so hesitant, we thought we would lessen our own creative work if we just say, well, like that, I want it like that. But it's so much more efficient to do it like that. If that's what you're picturing, tell it, reference it. It's absolutely fine, and it will help you a lot, again, in mapping out your journey. It will help a lot in getting there where you want to be. Again, going back to Fermi paradox, of course, the references, they're all very, very clear what they are. I think this was a good decision to stay that close to the references, not just for the end product, but also in the way we worked. We had a good idea what we wanted. And yeah, the idea of mapping your journey, be it with index card, be it with, again, doing sketches of the timeline, what you kind of picturing, what it could be. Also, like Screaming Amiga, yeah. Think about the reaction of the audience. Think about what you want to achieve, what the audience will experience on the journey you create for them. It helps. It helps to get a good picture, and I always say, try to lay it out from start to finish. As early as possible, try to have one picture of your production from start to finish, then you can start working on those things, and you will get lost a lot less. Because if you're working on things, you probably know that feeling when you get lost in something. You have done all the different things, they are here, now you have to finish something. You can get lost in it, and stuff like that can help you to, again, find your way. Similar thing, I go back to the point again and again, iterating. Other things that helps. Again, of course, concept art, yeah. And I don't mean good, beautiful concept art. I mean just sketching, bringing things to paper. Have a PNG you can show someone and ask, do you think this will work? Also, especially if you work alone, having things like that, you can easily send someone else just to get some feedback. Have 3 pictures. Well, those are my crude ideas for a scene. You can put text in there and have an arrow saying, well, this is a sphere and it's reflective. That's good concept art when it helps you to convey an idea, a meaning. Mood boards and collages, I really, really like them, where it's just, when you start out with, that's just like, oh, that's a mood board from demo parties. Oh, I want to have a scene which is like a really picturesque mountain scene, something like that. Start collecting things that convey that feeling to you and start putting them together. It can really help to identify a bit of the essence of what conveys that feeling. And it can help you to then move forward to your own concept. Things like that. In the same reason, something that's always good is have some form of key artworks. I told at the beginning of Fermi Paradox was this one shot of just the Earth, planet, atmosphere thing. This was also for us always kind of a key artwork, a key shot. And it helped to go back and back to that and asking ourselves, well, again, what do we experience when we look at it? That's something we really want to have in the intro. That's one of the key things we want to show, we want others to experience. This can also help you. I've also already mentioned it. It's one of the hardest things, one of the hardest things to learn and to gain as a skill. And I say it's a skill. It's a skill, and it's something you can also train on. And it's to learn to let go of things even when you worked really, really hard on it. Again, kind of going back to studying film, learning a lot about that. One of the things every one of us, of the students, needed to learn, we're also quite pressured into it, making things shorter and cutting out content. It's just normal when you work on things. You have those ideas in your head. You want to show everything of that. You want to put everything out there. You get a personal attachment to your work. But often it's not really required. Often it's something else for you than it will be for the audience. And so, asking why should that be there? Why should that scene be there? Does it need to be there? Does it still work if it isn't there? You do that with scene, you can do that with camera angles. And yeah, often shorter is better. For someone, again, this picture, you prepare this journey for them. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what it will be. Give it to them, and you want them to have the best possible experience. Often, shorter is better. Shorter pacing will be better. Removing things that don't contribute to that path. Take it out, and that is hard. Especially if you worked long on it, if you worked hard on it. But, good thing, you can always go back to them. This isn't lost. It's maybe not in that production plan for it. You can go back to them. You can reiterate on the ideas that you had there. Maybe if we click that it makes much more sense to include in something else you haven't even thought about in the first place. But I make such a strong point of it because I know how hard it is, and especially in a group context. And why I also say it's a good thing to learn. It can be really hard telling someone who put a lot into it, like, well, yeah, but I don't see it working in that production. It's a hard thing to ask from someone. It's a hard thing to get as feedback. But for the experience you deliver, it's often quite essential that you be able to talk in that way, to accept stuff like that, to also give feedback like that. So yeah, I want to make a big point out of it that this is, when it comes to direction, for me, I think one of the biggest skills you can have. One next to being fast on iterating on ideas, being able to let them go, being able to move away from things that you identify that they don't work out as you intended. So, and just one of the last things I just wanted to point out. I think, again, in a group, work together. I'm not a fan of really strict roles and things. Well, you do this, you do that, and then there's the third person who tells both of them what to do. And for some people, that works fine. That's how they want to do this. I much more like to, for everything, getting input from everyone. Especially because, again, direction a lot is about how does it feel. That's subjective. That's different from everyone. So the input that this doesn't feel good to me, it doesn't click, I think it should be, that's valuable input from everyone. And it's also input that pretty much everyone can give. How does that feel to me? Use this. If you're working alone on your production, try to reach out to people to get feedback. Also, ask for help. I really, really want to stress that asking for help isn't defeat. It's good practice. Because every one of us will get into tunnel vision when we're working on something. The more hyped we are about something, the more we run into situations where we are in tunnel vision, where we are blocked. And also for me, there are countless times where when I look at something, look at the timeline, concepts, other things, and it doesn't work and I don't know why. So ask someone. Ask someone for an idea, for an input, and even just the act of talking about it can help you gain some fresh perspective on it. So again, ask for help to freshen up, to get out of the rut. It's not it's not defeat. In the same way, know when to stop. That for me has two meanings. One is, again, deadline is in 30 minutes. There's still stuff to do. There are many, many things you could do and you wanted to do. If you want to release it, you need to stop somewhere. I can't really give you good advice on that one, how to handle this. I think that's just experience. To know when is enough. When have you reached a point where you could still do a lot of it, but now is the time to stop, move forward. The other meaning I see from that is know when to stop worrying about it. All those topics on direction, on concepts, on paths and shaping experience and stuff like that, that's prime for overthinking. And it's prime to lose yourself into it, in it. So know to stop. It's practical. Know when you put your hands from the keyboard, do something else. You've done enough. It all means know when to stop worrying. Not everything has to be super high level, thought out. Sometimes you're just doing something small, nice. You put something from you in there, people get something small out of it. It's fine. And sometimes you just have this one effect you really, really want to show people, and so you show it to them, and you don't worry about all that other stuff. So that's also knowing when to stop. Last slide, second last. It was quite a lot trying to do kind of an introduction with also some kind of practical advice on it. So I leave you kind of in the middle of it. There's here just things for all of you who want to get a bit more into those things, who want to maybe apply one or two of the things I talked about to your own productions. First off, what I recommend, documentation. Write things down, sketch things, and keep that stuff. It was really hard for me trying to find just the few things I showed you from Fermi Paradox. Keep it, keep everything. You can reuse that later. And it can also help you to reiterate on some lost ideas. And again, it doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be concept art you've seen on ArtStation and things. Just try to put things on something that is not your brain, So you can store it away, you can share it, talk about it. That's good practice. If you want to learn more about it, first recommendation, learn a bit about screenwriting. I've learned most of what I know from the practice of writing scripts. Because it's the first time you're putting ideas on paper again, putting it outside of your mind. And that is the first act where you start to make those creative decisions, what to put down, how. And so my recommendation is, yeah, read something about screenwriting. Try to write a script for your next production. Test it. For me, I learned a lot. Composition and color theory, good things to know about if you want to go to this record. For me, again, these are layers on top of the creative decisions, but it can help a lot. Same with editing, direction of photography, so camera work. There would recommend just read some essays or watch some video essays on YouTube about that if you want. There's a wealth of information out there. Hard thing is usually figuring out the relevant parts. So I recommend just reading or watching some essays. That can really give you a good input. Same thing, reading on the principle of animation will help you in regarding the art of how motion conveys meaning and how people experience certain motions. And next up, just if you want to have some inspiration, best thing in the whole wide world for that, Art of the Title. It's a website. It collects title sequences, which I think are like the closest things, probably, to demos in a classic feature film kind of context. They have a lot of great interviews. They have behind the scenes. They collect like the whole creative process, their concepts, their crude artworks for it. They focus a lot on the people who do the title sequences. Google it, watch it. I think it's one of the best things to get inspired and get some ideas and see how people are working. Music videos, I would say also, are quite close. Search on it on Vimeo, not YouTube. You will have a better experience that way. If you want to get more into storytelling and how to tell some stories, watch really, really short films. And I mean like sub 1 minute short films or 1 minute short films. There are a lot out there, and they can really break it down to short things. Always ask, always ask how it feels for you, and ask around for other people. The URL on top, in a few days, there will be the slides and references on there. Not yet, but I will get to there and link to all the different stuff at it. So, thank you. I don't know if we have time for questions. I think I've pretty much hit the mark here. So, no. One question.
But then we have to hurry.
Okay.
I'll hand through.
Sorry, so it's not a question, it's a remark. So if anyone has a question, raise your hand and now. Thank you for the talk. I agree with a lot of points you made. We use very similar techniques to what you presented, and I confirm it works, especially storyboard and stuff. I just want to react to the cutting things. Like you say, you have to realize that something sometimes is not on par with the rest, and you have to let it go. Mm-hmm. And it's especially difficult when you're a group and you have to tell someone, yeah, I don't quite like your stuff. But I can think of at least 2 examples where we had that, and the problem was not dropping the thing, it was that the execution was not good enough. And one person has in his head what they wanted to do, the other person sees what was actually done and was like, yeah, this is not good enough, we should remove it. But then you realize that if you actually push it and execute to the level that you wanted, it was actually useful. And I don't know how to deal with that, but it's something that you have to be a little bit careful about. Sometimes you don't want to drop it, you just want to raise the bar.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I didn't got into this when I had the topic on. I would say, yeah, of course, it can be that sometimes greatness comes from just pushing through with something. I would say I would make this if by all means, do it. Keep on it if you want it, if it's in your own space. Maybe sometimes if you can do it on your own and push through things and work on it on your own for something, I think that's a good idea to do. Other than that, yeah, sometimes one has to see. Usually this really gets also down to emotions and how you handle things. Personally, in that kind, and that's always something that's different in each situation. But yeah, by all means, yeah, sometimes it needs that extra push and not giving up on something. That's also another side of that coin, certainly. So thanks for bringing that up. I still say like not from principle. So yeah, thank you.